Electoral Commission confirming this morning it will go to the Constitutional Court. It'll ask judges there for the local election to be postponed until February next year. That's after the Cooperative Governance Minister, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, yesterday said she was proclaiming the date of the local polls for the 27th of October. This means that the IEC now goes to court to ask for that date to be delayed until February next year. You'll have seen some parties saying the elections should be postponed. Some say it should go ahead. Dr. Lubna Nadvi is a political analyst at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, but also representing an organization called the Active Citizens Movement. Dr. Nadvi, good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time. Your movement believes the elections should go ahead in October. Why do you believe that?
Hi, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers. Well, the ACM believes that citizens should have the opportunity to basically go to the polls and elect, the government that they would like to see at local government level. And of course, it's a constitutional right to be able to do so. But more importantly, the fact that we have seen so many challenges at local government level, the corruption that has become endemic, the fact that people are not getting the kind of service delivery that they should be getting. So there's multiple challenges, and every 5 years the assumption is that there would be a change of government, and that the ACM believes the elections should go ahead so that new people can come and new municipal councils can be elected, and that better service delivery and better governance can actually be put in place. So that's really the core reason.
I hear your argument, but there's also a legal definition of what constitutes a free and fair election. It's not just that we vote and that they're counted. There are a whole lot of things that hang off it. This also includes that there be free and fair campaigning. In other words, for an election to be free and fair, a political party has to be allowed to campaign freely and fairly. We can't campaign under level 3 of the lockdown, so can we really have a free and fair election in October?
Well, absolutely. That is a very critical point. And let me also clarify that the ACM is not saying that the elections must go ahead under any conditions, or go ahead without considering the fact that we have COVID in our midst. And it has qualified its position by saying that the IEC must ensure that conditions on the ground should be such that people are not going to be at risk, with the elections going ahead. Of course, the issue of free and fair requires that parties be able to campaign, that they're able to meet with their, voters and be able to put their message out. That has not really been possible in the last few months, and this presents a challenge. But then, of course, the point is that the IEC should have had, sight of this and should have been able to put circumstances in place. Again, we're also saying that, COVID has to be taken into account. So we're saying the elections should only go ahead if there are, arrangements put in place to ensure that voters are not at risk, and that, they can go to the polls, or that other arrangements are made, whether it is electronic voting or what have you. Some of these things may require that the constitution should be changed. But again, citizens should have the opportunity to be able to elect a new government at local government level.
So even if we wanted to change the constitution, it's too late now, because you would not be able to have a period of public consultation to do that. Someone would be off to court. I mean, they would have the right to do it. They'll go to court and they'll have that process thrown aside as well. And it seems to me the problem is no one can say if we have an election in October that it will be free and fair. No one can say if we have an election in February, it will be free and fair. No one can really say anything. I don't know how we make a decision when we have less than perfect information.
I agree with you. I think that we all accept that the circumstances are less than ideal. The COVID challenge has meant that there are no guarantees of whether even elections can even happen in February. But at the same time, the point is that one needs to move towards a situation where citizens can still, ensure that their rights are protected, that they can, go to the polls. And again, I mean, as a responsible civil society organization, ACM is saying that we have to ensure that voters are protected. So it's not going to be an unreasonable position that it will be taking. It's basically saying, let us actually try and work towards a situation where citizens can exercise their constitutional rights, but of course accepting that there are these challenges in place and that we have to account for them and that we have to take them into consideration. It might mean that civil society has to come together to look at ways in which we allow for these elections to happen and what mechanisms can be put on the ground or put in place to ensure that they do go ahead. So if, for example, the appeal that has been made by the IEC to the Constitutional Court to postpone the election is granted by the Constitutional Court, well, the ACM will, accept that decision. It's a law, abiding organization, and whatever the Constitutional Court decides will be something that the ACM will accept, and of course our broader citizenry will also have to accept, those decisions.
I mean, as I say, it's an entirely impossible situation because one of the outcomes of this is that the court might find that actually the elections have to happen. And I mean, I think if you look at the legalities of this, and we haven't seen the application yet from the Electoral Commission, but in the Constitution it just doesn't have a provision to postpone an election. I just can't see it. But I'm not a lawyer or a judge and never will be. But what I'm trying to get to is when you have a situation where no one knows what's going to happen, you want to do the best thing, I suppose. But then you would have a situation where you have the elections in October, but many people don't vote because they haven't been vaccinated, they're scared of COVID-19, they don't want to pass it on, etc., which means that the result of that election isn't really legitimate because you have a low turnout.
Agreed. I mean, the fact that the voters' roll, has had to be closed, and many people who may have wanted to register have not been able to. So that's an issue. The fact that political parties have not been able to campaign effectively, that's going to be a factor in getting the message out there. The issue of people not going to the polls with are not feeling safe enough to do so, that's a very significant factor. So that is why the whole issue of trying to find alternative means to be able to cast your ballot is something that we are proposing, and the conversation has to actually include that. How that is possible, electronic voting, mail, voting by mail, whatever the case may be. Most countries around the world have alternative mechanisms in place other than physically going to a polling station to cast your vote. And South Africa has to move towards looking at that. We are in unprecedented times and uncharted territory, and so we all have to work together to try and ensure that an ideal situation, or in a situation where it's less than ideal, we try and work towards the best possible outcome. So yes, I agree with you that all of these challenges present the possibility, if the election is going to go ahead, for an outcome that is less than ideal. But again, we have to try and forge ahead and find solutions to the problems.
Very tricky. Dr. Lubna Nadvi, political analyst at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, but speaking in this interview as part of the Active Citizens Movement. I do appreciate the time. Thank you. Not going to be the last.